Welcome back, Canada Catholic. It's been a little while since we've had a flip, but all the more reason to start it back up again. So we're going to use this one today to finish up the main bulk of the French Revolution before we get to the era of Napoleon and his attempts to kind of even things back out again. So right now on our revolutionary arc, we are very close to the top. We are very close to the most violent instances of the entire revolution. So some of our classes have already talked about this right here. So remember, after Louis has been captured, two groups were competing for control: the Girondins and the Jacobins. However, we're just going to call them the Garys and the Jacobs. They're competing for this control. Now, the Jacobs are actually encouraging, again, the Parisian mob, this roaming mob of sans-culottes members, the without pants people, to keep going around and killing the rich in the street. So that event's going to be called the September Massacres, where roaming groups of poor were killing rich in the streets, and the Jacobs are going to encourage this because are there more poor people or are there more rich people? That's exactly right, Josh Hall. Way to go. There are more poor people. So, another thing that's going to happen, you can see that it's cut off a little bit by my face up here, but the new government is going to declare war. So, as a demonstration of their power, the new French First Republic, under the Garys and the Jacobs, are going to want to declare war to try and really show their dominance. Now, ironically enough, they were really declaring war because they wanted more food and more supplies because they were running low. But France is going to declare war on Austria and the Holy Roman Empire on the outskirts of Austria. Now, so under the new two-party leaders, this is going to try and show how strong they are. But now France, their new government is going to have major victories. You would think that they would lose. You would really honestly think that they would lose, but they actually had a lot of major victories in Germany and Egypt as well. They were going to occupy North Africa. Now, in Egypt, Napoleon was busy there actually making a name for himself as a military leader. He was a part of the new revolutionary army in Egypt. So this is why the Germans really don't like French people to this day. Go figure. Now, this is another huge instance. Meanwhile, at home, during this entire war, these revolutionary tribunals are going to start up. The Garys and the Jacobs are going to start putting political leaders on trial in front of these massive trials, in front of all of these people, to try and make you answer for the reasons why the revolution had to start in the first place. So, the trials usually resulted in death. Now, my honors kids, you're writing your paper about The Dark Knight Rises and how it's based off of the French Revolution. You'll see this in there as well. Usually results in death. There is no appeal. There is no jury. And the trials specifically targeted and really disliked the royal family. Now, this is what they looked like right here, as you can see. So, large amount of people vying for control, but they are literally putting political leaders on trial, and a lot of times sentencing them to death. Now, the tool of death used at the time was the guillotine, the large scaffold with the blade that fell, and the weight of the blade actually killed the individual underneath. So, Louis, unfortunately, is going to be put in front of one of these revolutionary tribunals, and he is going to be put to death. Now, the National Convention, or the National Assembly is what we call them, decided to put Louis on trial for his crimes. The Jacobs are going to drastically outnumber the Garys, and they're going to vote for his execution. Now, at the scaffold, Louis was quoted as saying, "I forgive all of those who are guilty of my death." So he held on to the fact that the revolution was not his fault up until this point. If you ask me as a historian, it's pretty much his fault because the Third Estate literally complained to him at the very beginning, trying to get reform started, and he wouldn't listen. He was actually also, ironically enough, executed in the square that his father had built in Paris. So that right there is when Louis was executed. After his head fell in the basket, the executioner held it up and showed it to the entire crowd. So this also is a very big, it seems minor, but it's a very big example of how the Jacobs and the Garys are going to be battling for control over the entirety of France. So Jacques-Louis David, he is a Jacob journalist. He is a Jacobin journalist. He publishes a lot of lies, especially ones about the royal family. He was the one that demonstrated them as pigs in the media. So he's going to be arrested for his crimes against the revolution, for lying in the paper, for publishing false truths. So here's the thing, though. There are more Jacobs in the National Assembly at this point than there are Garys, and they're going to vote for his acquittal, so he got off. Now, the Jacobs are going to – this is a demonstration of just how strong this new radical party was getting. So what's going to happen to Jacques-Louis David, though, is one of the Gary supporters, a woman, is going to sneak into his house and stab him to death in his bathtub. Take that. So the Reign of Terror, I underline the important stuff for you. This is our cap. This is our moment. Like, this is where things got its absolute worst. The Reign of Terror came immediately following the death of Louis in 1793. So Marie Antoinette led this entire initiative because she herself did not want to die. So she led a parade of prominent and not so prominent citizens to their deaths. So the guillotine was a new instrument that was put to work. This is the crazy part. Public executions were considered educational during the French Revolution. You were encouraged to bring your children to the execution so you would see what the new government would do to you if you spoke poorly of them. So, women were encouraged to actually sit and knit during the trials and executions. The Revolutionary Tribunal ordered the execution of 2,400 people in Paris alone. And then across France, over 30,000 people died due to the Reign of Terror. It's a lot of heads in baskets. It's like a lot. And if the average human head weighs 8 pounds, it's going to start stacking up. So, the terror was designed, though, to fight the enemies of the revolution, to prevent this counter-revolution movement. So, just like the counter-reformation for the Catholic Church was meant to fix the Catholic Church, the counter-revolutionaries in the French Revolution wanted to actually get things back to the way they were. They wanted to hand everything back over to the royals and the nobles because they themselves were actually prominent citizens. Some of the bourgeoisie members wanted to go back to the way things were because they didn't realize how violent everything was going to get. So, most of the people rounded up, though, were not aristocrats. They were just ordinary people. You literally could be put to death just for talking bad about the National Assembly. That's awful. So, people like Joe Lisnack and Alex Altenbach and all you guys probably be, dead during the Reign of Terror within a short amount of time, especially if I was in charge. I'm just saying. All right. So, a man and his family might be led to the guillotine for just saying something bad about the revolutionary government. Watch committees were also used around the nation. They encouraged the arrest of suspected persons. Those who either put their conduct or their relationships by their remarks or by their writing are shown as partisans of tyranny and federalism and the enemies of liberty. So if you literally said, Louis XVI, he's a good guy, you could be put to death. So it's a very, very crucial time. Now, this says right up here at the top, it actually says right there, is the suspension of civil liberties. Now, a civil liberty you have is like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of all of these things. So the National Assembly is going to realize when this revolution is getting to its worst point during the Reign of Terror, they're going to suspend everyone's civil liberties. They're going to tell you, you do not have freedom of speech anymore. You do not have freedom of religion anymore. And any other kind of activity that goes against the revolution is now not acceptable. So they literally wanted to take all of the things that were set down in the Declaration of the Rights of Man that really got this whole thing fueled up in the first place to go away, just so they could bring evenness back to the Directory. Now, you need to write this down real quick as well, but this all comes on the skirts of this thing called the Committee of Public Safety, okay? Now, the Committee of Public Safety was created for those revolutionary tribunals, and the idea was we're going to keep everyone safe. We are going to try and actually get things back to even by putting all the bad guys to death. So it was led by this guy named Robespierre. That's Robespierre. Robespierre. Now, Robespierre started this Committee of Public Safety to try and keep the bad people dead and the good people alive, even though he had, close to 30,000 people put to death in these revolutionary tribunals. And then also, he himself was put to death after starting the committee itself by the Committee of Public Safety. So the Committee of Public Safety is going to kill the person who founded it, as well as Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette was also put to death later on. And she did not say, let them eat cake. It's a big myth. Cake didn't even really exist at the time. Yeast only made cakes rise like this much. So this is the last icing on the cake for, for the entire French Revolution. The Directory. People had grown really, really tired by 1795. I mean, that's 6 years of blood, death, and tears. So by this point, they were really ready for everything to even back out. So the Directory was used to kind of try and set up an initial government. The Directory was a 5-man executive branch, all businessmen. They were just normal businessmen. They had complete executive power. So these 5 men decided what was going to happen moving from the revolution forward. This new government is going to, again, be called the Directory. However, the Directory is very ineffective and is going to be overthrown by a little guy. Well, he's not even that little. He's actually 5'7". He's going to be overthrown by a military leader, we'll call him that, who had a really tall wife. His name's Napoleon. We'll talk about him some more tomorrow. And I hope you all have a great evening. See y'all then.